We need to make hard decisions so that we can actually have the best security in this country.
Is actually seeking to derogate bills of rights that are guaranteed in the new constitution.
We must make sure that our media is free, our media has got the ability to investigate.
In the name of security, uproar over shocking provisions in Security Amendment Bill.
We are going down a slippery slope. If we are not careful, we will come to regret it.
They could create a police state, rights defenders warn of changes to security laws.
Nyeri says farewell to 15 victims of Mandera Quarry massacre.
Mambo ya teknoloji mpya. Mtu anaweza kufanya chochote ile anafanya akiwa kwa street na mambo itatokea tu. Mtu hawezi kujua kama ni ya kweli ama ni ya uongo.
And title deed or piece of paper, why the title deed is no longer sacred in Kenya.
Welcome to the program. Now, the National Assembly is tomorrow set to debate proposed changes in the way security is handled in the country.
30 pieces of legislation touching on security of the country have been earmarked for amendment, with the public having a chance today to contribute to the bills.
This as opposition members raised the red flag over the proposed changes, terming them draconian. KTN's Aaron Ocheng begins our coverage tonight.
The Administration and National Security Committee of the National Assembly had a lot on its plate Wednesday to finalize the Security Laws Amendment Bill 2014 that proposes radical changes in the security operations of the country. After a first reading on the floor of the House Tuesday evening, and with only 24 hours publication period, it was the turn of the members of the public to give their input into the bill before it is debated tomorrow by members of the National Assembly.
And I want to mention that a few areas that this bill is touching. And as I said earlier, even on the floor of Parliament, that the bill intends to amend over 30 acts which are related to security.
There are too many arms in the wrong hands. Everybody nowadays applies a firearm and the following day you have it. So if everybody has a gun in this country, or too many people have guns in this country, be sure that there will be a lot of pronounced insecurity, because
specifically about terrorism na mambo ya treason. Hapo hata aina ya zikubaliwe, detain, arrest, even shoot.
Among other changes, the bill proposes to jail journalists for up to 5 years or fine them 5 million shillings or both if found guilty of undermining investigations or security operations through their broadcast or publications. Anyone who publishes photographs of victims of terrorism without the consent of the police can be jailed for 3 years or fined 5 million shillings or both. The bill also proposes to allow the national security organs to intercept communications for purposes of detecting, deterring, and disrupting terrorism and related activities. It also establishes a counter-terrorism center to coordinate national counter-terrorism efforts. For refugees in the country, the bill proposes a maximum number of 150,000 refugees at any given time in the country. Kenyans on social media should also be on the lookout, especially those who post updates that praise, advocate, or incite acts of terrorism, that they risk getting imprisoned for over 20 years. Part of the proposal also touches on issue of stripping of women, as it was witnessed recently. Those found guilty face up to 20 years in jail. Any form of demonstration will also have to be conducted at designated areas only. Opposition members of the Senate are raising concern over the speed in which the bill has been fast-tracked and some of the proposals fronted, terming them draconian.
Will be resisted, including going to defend the provisions in the Constitution in courts of law. Therefore, I'm calling upon the media particularly, to take this, not to take this lying down, because the mainstream media did not suffer as much as individual journalists at that time.
The bill will be debated Thursday. Over 30 pieces of legislation have been proposed to be amended touching on security of the country. But already questions are being asked as to whether the proposed changes are a direct infringement of the human rights of the people of the country, or the recent security lapses in the country is a justification for the changes. Aaron Ocheng, KTN, Nairobi.
One of the proposals in the bill is to give the National Intelligence Service some biting power. And the big question tonight we are asking is, should the NIS be allowed to raid and bug your house at will in the name of security?
Let us know what you think. Our interactive platform, that is Twitter at Ben_Kitili, at KTN Kenya, and of course at Linda Ogutu. We'd like to pick your mind on that. Let us know what you think.
The proposed Circularity Laws Amendment Bill has sparked rage within the human rights community. Civil society says Kenyans should not allow Parliament to pass the bill, which they describe as draconian. As KTN's Ashamulu reports, activists argue that the bill undermines the Bill of Rights enshrined in the Constitution.
Tabled on Tuesday, discussed in a public hearing within one day and in only one county, the Security Laws Amendment Bill of 2014 has opened Pandora's box.
This emergency.
By the time we spoke to the International Commission of Jurists, they were also yet to locate the bill.
When you publish bills for 14 days as required in the standing orders, it enables the public to access those bills, to read and understand them, and to have opportunity to respond to the bills.
But counter-terrorism specialist Richard Tuta says amending our security laws was long overdue.
The US was attacked somewhere in September 11, but on October 26th of the same year, they had an act in place. In fact, even as we are taking long.
Kenya, Kenya. As it marked the International Day of Human Rights here in Nairobi, the civil society's dissenting voice in the proposed bill was loud and clear.
Terrorism in this country is not because of human rights or because of the Constitution. Terrorism is growing because of a number of things. One is the utter disarray and confusion of our police force.
Among other things, the bill seeks to give the National Intelligence Service powers to bite. It gives the Director General of the NIS the authority to obtain any information, material, record, document, or thing to aid in security operations. NIS officers can enter any place or obtain access to anything, search for or remove or return, examine, take extracts from, make copies of, or record that information. They can monitor communication, install, maintain, or remove anything. They can also do anything considered necessary to preserve national security. In the Prevention of Terrorism Act, the amendments seek to control the broadcast of security matters. A part of the bill proposes that any person who broadcasts any information which undermines investigations or security operations without authorization from the National Police Service is liable to 3 years imprisonment or a 5 million shilling fine, or both.
The Constitution of 2010 is an amalgamation of solutions for all our problems. It solves our security problems, it solves our governance problems, and it provides a shared vision of the future for the country.
The new media is the oxygen that terrorists need to survive. So if you want to do away with terrorism today, bring about responsible media.
We must make sure that our media is free, our media has got the ability to investigate, our media is the messenger. You don't get the messenger. The messenger cannot be the problem.
With the ball now on Parliament's court, it's a wait-and-tell game on whether the bill will sail through or if the dissenting voices will be loud enough to change it. Ashamwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
Varying arguments there, Ashamwilu and Aaron Ochieng, on Security Law Amendment Bill 2014 that has caused quite a stir.
Let's now try to put some of the 30 pieces of legislation into perspective. John Alanamu is speaking to some experts in studio. John Alan.
All right, many thanks, Ben and Linda. Like we're discussing today, the Security Amendments Bill, all the talk in town is focused around this, and the one day that people have had to interrogate this bill. Some people in government saying that it's happened that way before in other countries like the United Kingdom and the US with the passing of the Patriot Act. But nonetheless, let's get into some of the issues that people have with it. To my extreme right, or to my immediate right rather, is Henry Minor from Article 19, and our security analyst Andrew Franklin on my extreme right as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's start with you, Henry. What do you think are the major issues for you with this Security Amendments Bill?
The amendment bill seeks to make changes on 24 laws, substantive changes on 24 laws, even though Honorable Kamama told us that there are minor changes they are making. There can't be 24 laws where you're making minor changes, including doing away with constitutional safeguards on things like security officers would require a court order before they intrude into your space.
Yeah.
So the main things are that the bill in itself seeks to bring back a clause on national security, which was defeated. If you all remember when we were passing the Constitution, there were two words that were sneaked onto Article 24 before the former president was given the Constitution for promulgation.
Yeah.
That was defeated. They seem to be bringing it back in a way that national security would be a standing limitation on all Bill of Rights. So that's one issue. The second issue is that while it seeks in one way to say it wants to deal with the issue of right to privacy by protecting women and other people from being
stripped and protecting their modesty, yes.
On one hand, that's what it's done, and it seems popular to that extent that it's bringing in a harsh sentence of 20 years. But on the other hand, it introduces 10 other provisions where your right to privacy will never be guaranteed. So because of a possibility that intelligence officers can intrude and technically get into your communication system, they are now thinking that it is feasible and okay for them to snoop onto your communications, for them to look at your letters, your email, without any regard. Not that they have any record that they are suspecting you of anything.
How about oversight with respect to the National Intelligence Security Act? It is the Director General who would give this order, especially with regard to covert operations. That's what the amendment says.
There isn't clarity on how the proposed security amendment law would think through civilian oversight. In fact, if you take the Director General giving that order, and you take the proposed disciplinary board, which is again made up of only security agencies, 5 people, 4 of them being from the 3 security agencies, plus a person who is fit to be appointed a judge.
All right.
That tells you that we are going back into a process where the security agencies do not want civilian oversight.
Okay.
And they just want to run away with everything in the name of counterterrorism.
All right, Henry, I'll ask you to adjust your microphone so that we can listen to you properly. Andrew, what is the problem for you with respect, or is there anything positive from this in this omnibus?
Well, John Allen, I'm not here to offer just problems. I generally try to offer solutions.
Yeah.
And I was very pleased that you forwarded the PDF to me. It's 90 pages. It's a 90-page amendment to any number of bills ranging from the Penal Code to Public Order Act. There has been no justification for these amendments to date, as in how amending these various and sundry bills would have prevented or mitigated the massacres in Mandera.
All right.
Either the bus massacre or the quarry massacre.
Okay.
In no way do these amendments, these suggested changes, are they explained by how this would have somehow
had an
ensured
impact
or had a positive impact on how the National Police Service failed to react at Impekitoni and Hindi to actionable intelligence furnished by the National Intelligence Service.
Okay.
In other words, I mean, we're all on some sort of script here where there are people in Parliament who are talking about we're going to swing into action, desperate times call for desperate measures, hopefully desperate measures that might work. I would suggest that we are in some ways fortunate to have the United States, the Central Intelligence Agency, revealed in a Senate report today, having in the aftermath of the World Trade Center terrorist attack, the positive aspect is we formed our security services in the United States, which had been falling all over each other.
Yeah.
Obviously, the negative aspect was this rush to torture. This mad rush, which apparently, despite, in addition to being morally repugnant and not the American way,
wasn't
apparently
effective.
was not at all effective. And in fact, it comes out that case officers in the field, CIA officers in the field, were saying, let's go back to the old-fashioned way of interrogating people.
Yeah.
We don't need what you have us doing because it's not producing any actionable intelligence.
All right, let me just swing it over to Henry for that. That's a great point to pick it up from. Henry, just as you adjust your microphone, I'll just have to ask you to hold it as you speak. With respect to the respect of rights of the accused, is there something that you feel might need to be changed, especially in the Prevention of Terrorism Act? The remanding of a terror suspect changed from 90 days to 360?
This is one of the biggest challenges within this law, that we've not had any tangible cases that clearly tell us that they were terrorists who we could not remand following justifiable reasons proffered by Director of Public Prosecutions. But we want to, one, lengthen that period indefinitely, because you're saying that from the 90 days, the court may be allowed to extend that. So it's remand by court.
Yeah.
Without putting in extenuating circumstances that would require that extension. That in itself is against the Constitution, because the Constitution clearly spells out processes. And what I need to reiterate, I think people in the security sectors and some of the MPs tend to think that people in civil society are against security actors. No, we would like the country to be secure. It's paramount. But that's not the only thing that would secure this country. We need to think holistically without being excessively reactive. It is because of being reactive and not thinking strategically that these attacks continue to happen.
But in the introduction of the National Counterterrorism Center, there are provisions for the National Counterterrorism Center to handle issues such as de-radicalization of people who are on the brink of radicalization and fundamentalism. Are those not positive changes?
They are positive statements that are not well thought through, because the bill does not even define what radicalization is. So radicalization here is thought to be a concept that only has negative connotations.
Yeah.
You could radicalize people to become excessively Kenyan, and that would be positive. Those who fought for our liberation were radical enough to stand against certain injustices. So as a human rights person, I train people to be able to stand on their feet and say no to torture and say no to human rights violations. If you then called me somebody who's radicalizing those people, you would get away with it, because this proposed bill does not define what radicalization is. It is anything that the security agency might not think it works for them. And then they will label it radicalization and run away with it.
Okay, Andrew, as we wind up, what are the short-term solutions in terms of handling the security challenges that we have if the laws, as quite a number of people are saying, aren't going to help change much?
The very simple answer is to start enforcing and implementing the laws we already have on our books, which are perfectly good. Whether it's the National Police Service Act of 2011, whether it's the Kenya Defense Forces Act of 2012, the National Intelligence Service Act of 2012, and more importantly, just as importantly, the National Security Council Act of 2012, which would give us sort of a super counterterrorism center if we needed it. But in the very short term, instead of spending a lot of time trying to pass amendments to some 25, 34 laws, where nobody is saying which laws to date have failed us, by the way. Nobody has explained how the National Police Service Act of 2011 has failed us because we have not implemented it yet.
Speaking of which, I'll just have to chime in there, the change of the procedure of the appointment of the Inspector General. Right now, we don't have an IG, and this law proposes that the President would nominate the Inspector General and the National Assembly, then vet him, as opposed to a selection committee. Your thoughts, Andrew, and then Henry?
Well, I think that the President, if he can nominate him, fine, as long as the National Assembly takes its position, which is as a separate, co-equal branch of our government under the 2010 Constitution. And also that the IG retains security of tenure, so that once the President nominates a qualified, suitable individual, and that person is properly vetted and put in by the National Assembly or by Parliament, we get to live with him for 4 years or 5 years perhaps. So that person can actually change that disorganized agency to make it an effective modern policing service, which will then be able to, given the fact that we have paramilitary and the administration police, we have specialized commando units in the General Service Unit, we have a criminal investigation department, we have the regular police. In other words, we have all the four arms for internal security
that we need
right now. We don't need to give the Director General of NIS his own little army. The Kenya Defense Forces needs to be reconstituted up on the border, possibly withdrawn from Somalia to strike out against our external enemies.
All right. Okay, Henry, what are your final thoughts with respect to the change in procedure of the nomination of the Inspector General, and generally, what do you think are the short-term solutions in resolving insecurity in this country?
Short-term solutions in dealing with insecurity is for the National Security Council to sit, debate clearly, and understand what has been ailing the country. The truth is, it's not for the dearth of laws. It's not for lack of laws that we've been attacked. It is for lack of proper deployment of police officers. When you deploy rookies, people who've just cleared college, to areas that are highly volatile, and you have the best of your soldiers where you do not need them. That does not need any military strategist to know it is wrong. Junior officers who died in Baragoi, junior officers who've been killed in Kapedo, it means somebody is not just thinking about basics. So we need to get those basics right. The second thing, the President and the heads of each of these security agencies have to deal with corruption and malaise within their teams. The third thing is, as a country, we need to begin having a clear accountability of security agencies. To the extent that they are an end in themselves, we will not manage to deal with this issue. The more they begin to understand, like anybody else, they will be held to account, the more they will change. Going back into old tactics of torture and violation is not what is going to secure Kenya. America employed those, they failed. They are rethinking about their strategies. Their Patriot Law was about outsiders. It wasn't about Americans. Here we are trying to bring it so that we gag Kenyans. I want to say that I've read through that, including laws like Public Benefits Act that have not been operationalized. We are amending them, giving the CS an opportunity to classify public benefit organization. For what purpose are we getting our energy on the wrong side?
Okay, unfortunately, we can't continue with this debate, but it will be a subject to national debate tomorrow on the floor of the National Assembly. Henry Miner from the Article 19, thank you very much for joining us. As always, Andrew Franklin, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Very, very important times here in Kenya with respect to the Security Laws Amendment Bill. There are quite a number of things in there. It's a 90-page document. If you have time, go through it and make your voice heard tomorrow, even if public consultation has wound up. But that debate will be on the National Assembly floor tomorrow. Follow it. It will be on KTN as well. Back to you, Linda and Ben.
John Alanamu on the National Security Amendment Bill 2014. Thank you for that discussion. Let's still stay with security and the law. And the crew of a bus in which a female passenger was stripped and sexually assaulted in Githurai here in Nairobi now face the death penalty after they were charged with robbery with violence and sexual assault. The charge of robbery with violence now mean that they could get the death penalty in addition to a 10-year jail term or enhanced life imprisonment, that is if the prosecution secures a conviction for the two offenses. The prosecution said they robbed the woman of personal effects valued at 41,700 shillings before they sexually assaulted her. The two, Nicholas Shege Mwangi and Meshak Muru Mwangi, denied that they jointly with others not before the court robbed the 21-year-old woman in a bus that was operating under the Nazigi Sacco. The prosecutor has also asked the court to deny the suspects bond for their own safety due to the public outrage the act elicited after mobile phone footage of the assault was uploaded on the internet and circulated on social media. The identity of the woman who was assaulted has been concealed until she testifies. We are keeping an eye on that story for you. Now let's move on. And Nyeri County stood still today as residents paid their last respects to 15 of the men who were killed in the terror attack at a quarry in Mandera last week. KTN's Karon Derry followed proceedings at the joint requiem mass for the victims in Nyeri.
They could hardly contain their pain and anguish. Early morning at the Nyeri Provincial General Hospital mortuary, disbelief that these men who had gone to fend for their loved ones in Mandera have come back in caskets, having been shot and others beheaded by Al-Shabaab militia at the Koromei Quarry in Mandera. The 15 coffins stood side by side here at the Dedan Kimathi Kamukunji grounds in Nyeri town.
Wale ambao walikuja kuua vijana wetu hawakuteremshwa na parachute, si walipitia kwa mpaka. Kuna askari ama hakuna? Kuna askari ama hakuna? Hilo ni swali.
Habari hiyo unapatiana kwa wakora au unauza au unapuuza, basi na wewe pia utachukuliwa kama mgaidi na mtu ambaye hastahili kuwa katika nchi hii.
We buried 28 people. Today we are burying 36. Tomorrow we bury 100. For how long are we going to continue doing this? It is the high time this country took a position of alertness.
Watu hawajui Kiswahili na anabeba kitambulisho ya Kenya. Alipata kitambulisho ya Kenya namna gani? We want them to be rechecked again so that we can only have genuine Kenyans in Kenya. Na wale wakora waishi kwao na ukora wao.
It was an interdenominational prayer meeting that brought together close to 5,000 people at the Kamukunji grounds and religious leaders from both the Christian and Muslim faiths. The service was presided over by Nyeri Catholic Archbishop Peter Cairo.
Na hata Yesu alipokuwa akiwa msalabani, sala yake ilikuwa, Baba wasamehe kwa sababu hawajui watendalo.
After the emotional 2-hour service, the 15 bodies were taken to their final resting place in different areas of Nyeri and one in Laikipia. A majority were from Chaka area where they worked as quarry workers before moving to Mandera for the same kind of work. 15 men who had traveled thousands of kilometers to Mandera County to earn a living to cater for their families, and instead of coming back home here in Nyeri County to their loved ones, instead they come back in coffins. And Kenyans now ask, for how long shall this continue? Tears flowing due to the acts of terrorism. Carol Derry, KTN, Kamukunji grounds, Nyeri County.
All right, thank you for staying with KTN Prime. Let's remind you of a big question tonight. Should the NIS be allowed to raid and bag your house at will in the name of security? Of course, this is linked to the National Security Bill, Amendment Bill 2014.
Chimei Hagai tweets, calling the terrorism bill draconian is an understatement. The bill is underpinned on parliamentary emotions.
Otoma Sanya, simple question. How do we differentiate them from thugs?
Keep the SMSs and tweets coming. For now, we take a quick break. After this, we shall be bringing you more news. Stay with us. Just ahead, we tell you why the title deed is no longer sacred in Kenya.
You're watching KTN Prime.
Land title deeds in Kenya have seemingly gradually lost their sanctity.
A number of loan seekers using their title deeds as security have been turned down by banks.
Land experts blame this on the disorganization within the land service sector. KTN's Ian Ofula has tonight's edition of a special Jamhuri Week features on the state of the Republic.
But everybody has one place where he was born. And mine is Kenya.
58-year-old Christine Kwamboka can hardly relate to the patriotic words in the song My Land is Kenya by Roger Whittaker. In fact, she probably barely remembers she once owned land after the passing of her husband 15 years ago. You see, she's not just a widow, but she also suffers from a mental problem. A fact that her brothers-in-law took advantage of and allegedly grabbed land from her. She's now a squatter in her own land.
Shida yenye kwa hapa ni kwa vile hawataki mtu mwenye akona akili ya kujua kile kinaendelea katika hili boma. Sawa, wanataka mtu mwenye wanachukua kama mwenye kazi, wanamuita aende kuwafanyia kazi kwao.
With her mental state, her children have been unable to track any official documents proving the ownership of her land, and as such, she survives merely on cultivating other people's land. In the case of Catherine, an anecdote of the myriads of land ownership cases across the country. Property demolition, double title deeds allocation, and land wrangles have become a norm in the recent years.
Wakati wa zamani, hadi miliki ya shamba ambayo ni title ilikuwa wa maana sana, sababu hakuna vile kungetokea title deed ingine ya pandia. Title deed ya sugu hiyo ilikuwa title na inatoka pahali moja na itatoka ikiwa yako.
Title wakati kwa ukulima inakuwa na shida kwa sababu serikali haipangi mkulima mpango yake kamili mpaka nafurahia kazi yake ya ukulima. So utakuta unaenda nataka kuomba loan alafu watu ya pang waamini hiyo title.
The validity of the document nowadays you find is most wanting. Yes, and therefore we will just request the government that the respect or the respect for the title deeds as a document should be protected.
It was when Lands Cabinet Secretary Charity Ngilu rolled out shelves at Arthi House that the country was taken aback by the disorganization of crucial land documents at the ministry. Perhaps the first problem to the land service system.
If you have land records that they are not always updated, you end up with your land on a wrong map sheet. You end up with your records not being complete. Part of it is in, part of it is out of it. You will definitely end up with a dispute.
Even with the government's attempts to bring order to the perennially trouble-ridden Ministry of Lands, the power vested in the land registrar to issue title deeds has been the subject of a tussle between the Lands Cabinet Secretary and the National Lands Commission. Since the land registrars are appointees of the Public Service Commission, it has always been assumed that they are under the Cabinet Secretary and not the National Land Commission, which is an independent constitutional body.
Let's join hands with the National Land Commission and all other players so that we can give title deeds. Your Excellency, you may not have met the chairman of the National Land Commission, but I also want to say that actually he comes from this region. And I expect that he should be in the forefront to support us giving title deeds.
This prompting the president and his deputy to intervene.
There'll be no more acrimony between us, that we will do work as a team, we'll work together in all areas of cooperation, all areas that have been difficult for us, and ensure that we serve the people of Kenya in matters of land as required by the Constitution and by the law.
We required not only to have the chief register of land, of titles, but that person ought to have been under the oversight of the National Land Commission. But the registrar, again, as it were, is in dispute whether he's under the supervision of the Cabinet Secretary, as the law stands to date, and how the oversight of the National Land Commission comes in. And I think that is a worrisome situation.
And today, having a title deed in Kenya is no assurance that another person won't turn up the next minute with another copy of supposedly original title to the same piece of land, and most probably with police officers in tow to kick you out. As prestigious and as resourceful as land is, 51 years on since the country gained independence, and land ownership is still a contentious issue across the country. And even as the government intends to issue at least 3 million title deeds by the end of its term for Catherine and her family, and the hundreds of others with court cases feel that this baggage needs to be cleaned up fast. Ian Wafula, KTN, Nairobi.
And mine is Kenya, so warm and wild and free.
Remember, we will have a comprehensive coverage for you come that Jamhuri Day. Let's now take a look at business news. Of course, that is being done by Abby Agina. Abby, what do we have in business today?
Well, it has been an eventful day in the business world, Linda. And one of the stories we'll be taking a look at is on the issue of low energy costs. Well, I'll tell you more about this after the break. Good evening, and you're just in time to get the best and the latest news in the world of business. Analysts have welcomed the Parliament's decision to raise Kenya's debt ceiling from 1.2 trillion to 2.5 trillion shillings. In an exclusive interview with KTN Business, Alikan Sachu says it was a well-calculated move, but it will require prudent financial management.
You know, the optics of it, the sheer scale, the size of the number, $27.77 billion is a very, very big number. When you convert it into shillings, it looks even bigger. I think what it's telling us very clearly is what I was saying to you earlier, which is we're going from a very conservative balance sheet to suddenly loading up the balance sheet with debt. But as long as this debt is spent in the right place, as long as we make the investments that need to be made, we will make a return that will pay this debt off.
And now to some good news. Expect to see even lower power bills this month as the energy generating farm KTN completes the 11.5 billion shilling all-carrier geothermal power project and connects an entire 280 megawatts project to the national grid. The project is part of the government's 5,000 megawatts plan that seeks to reduce power costs and increase the country's attractiveness to investors.
Christmas is coming early for electricity consumers in the country. Power generating company KTN says it has connected the entire 280 megawatt all-carrier geothermal project to the national grid, setting the stage for lower power bills and putting the state a step closer to achieving the 5,000 megawatt plan. The addition brings KTN's contribution to the national grid to 1,575 megawatts, with geothermal surpassing hydro as the main source of power for the second month in a row. And this could not have come at a better time given the reduced inflow of water to the country's hydropower dams, which previously would have led to higher bills and power rationing. The high cost of power has earned Kenya a spot in the list of most expensive places to do business, a fact that has reduced the country's attractiveness and impeded economic growth. To correct this, the government unveiled the 5,000 megawatt project that would diversify the country's energy mix beyond hydro to renewable sources like geothermal, wind and solar, and thereby reduce the cost of power. So far, the addition of the 280 megawatt to the national grid has seen the cost of electricity fall consistently since August. Over the period, the fuel cost adjustment has dropped 60% from 7 shillings and 22 cents per kilowatt hour in August to 2 shillings and 87 cents in December. The news comes amid rising concern that the country's 5,000 megawatt plan is overstated and could make electricity tariffs expensive.
Are we putting on too much energy too quickly? Are we going to be able to absorb that energy straight away? And I think it's all about execution.
But Kengen insists that the demand for power is expected to rise as the country implements big projects which alone could consume close to 4,000 megawatts. The firm is already calling for bids for Olkaria 1 and 5, which will add some 210 megawatts to the national grid. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business.
Many thanks, Adelaide. Let's see how that pans out. Despite reduced maize production this year, the Ministry of Agriculture says the country has sufficient grain reserves to meet local demand for the next 6 months. Speaking during the unveiling of the Food Assessment Report, Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Felix Koskei said the country had witnessed a marginal reduction of maize this year from 40.3 million to 38.8 million bags. However, he says the country still has a surplus of food and there was no cause for alarm. Well, let's now take a look at the business highlights of the day.
Treasury will within this week receive the first installment of funds from China for the construction of the standard gauge railway as government accelerates implementation of the 327 billion shillings flagship project. Construction works of the railway from Mombasa to Nairobi has already commenced, with government saying it will generate 30,000 jobs for locals and 5,000 for Chinese expatriates. The Chinese Republic pledged 213 billion shillings loan for the railway construction, and the rest funded by Kenya through the 1.5% railway levy on imported goods. Real estate developer Sultan Palace Development Limited has joined the push to enhance the tourism industry in Kenya. The real estate company has launched the first phase of the over 5 billion exclusive beach resort project located in coastal Kilifi County, covering 60% of the green area and the remaining 40% being building area. The project, that will employ a 90% Kenyan workforce, is set to be complete by December 2016, targeting high-end property investors following increased interest by Kenyans in holiday homes. And a partnership between Samsung Electronics East Africa and Barclays Bank of Kenya now allows Barclay card customers to use their credit cards to purchase Samsung's flagship device, the Galaxy Note 4, in 3 monthly installments at 0% interest. Being the latest device on the market competing against the iPhone 6, the Galaxy Note 4 is one of the most coveted and fastest moving Samsung Galaxy phones in the market, with 1,200 units sold within a month.
That's all the business news we had for you today. My name is Abi Agina. I now leave you with the day's financial report.
Thika United Football Club stands tall above Posta Rangers, but John Kamau, who has since ditched the Thika-based side, has no regrets taking over a team who just been in top-flight football for 1 season. Kamau was unveiled by his new employer, Postal Corporation of Kenya, who announced it will be spending 24 million shillings annually on Rangers. Kamau committed himself in helping the club, which will use Eldoret's Kipchoge Keino Stadium as its home ground, to finish among the top 8 next season. Hassan Chuma reports.
After netting John Kamau, Posta Rangers management announced it is targeting Thika United's midfield maestro David Kingatwa. Club chairman John Tanui, understandably acting on advice from Kamau, hinted at plans to also bring on board Francis Kahata, a player who was nurtured by Kamau. Kamau says he could not resist Rangers' incentives and the caliber of playing in its stable.
With the kind of talk that we had with the management, I think this was the right place for me, and more so on my side, I would like to grow.
The former Thika United coach has signed a 2-year deal with Rangers and will be assisted by George Maina, who helped the team to return to the Premier League.
And even after maybe somebody has played for 2, 3, 4 years, he'll remain as an employee.
This could be the reason why the club is becoming a favorite club in the country, with FC Leopards shortstopper Patrick Matasi, Shaban Odonji, formerly of Nakuru All-Stars, Sony Sugars, Charles Odete, KCB's John Odhiambo changing allegiance to the side.
Contract yangu ilikuwa imeisha na pia nilikuwa nataka kutoka pia nione hapo nje vile kuko hizo timu zingine.
Postal Corporation withdrew its sponsorship with Rangers in 2011, but negotiations are complete for the state corporation to take over the side. The Rangers have adopted Eldoret's Kipchoge Keino Stadium as their home ground.
As a corporation, we saw the importance of having Postal Rangers back as it were, and discussed with the owners of Rangers. We have finalized on the discussion and agreed on the way forward.
Rangers were runners-up to Super Park in the 2014 GoTV, and with the new signings, the side hopes to give Gor Mahia, Tusk and Super Park a run for their money come the 2015 season. Hassan Juma, KTN Sports.
And more local football news. Kenyan Premier League champions Gor Mahia has not officially released Uganda import Danny Serunkuma, David Ochieng, or any other player, apart from just one player, that is Geoffrey Kizito. Gor Mahia officially released Ugandan midfielder Geoffrey Kizito on Tuesday after contract extension talks with the player collapsed. This is according to the club's vice chairman John Pesa, who was speaking during the unveiling of a partnership between Standard Group and Gor Mahia.
Supporting the best and supporting young talent, particularly in sports.
Again, I would like to urge our fans who have given us a great push. So next time, when you want to help our club, it is 22840. That's for Gor Mahia.
The club recognizes only one player who has been signed off, and that is Baba Kizito. We signed him off yesterday. We sent him a release letter by email, and I'm sure by today he's going to join the other club. For the other two players you have mentioned, Serikuma and Oweno, we have not released them from the club because they have not come officially to ask for their release letters.
So, should NIS be allowed to raid and bag your house at will in the name of security? That was our big question tonight.
And that conversation will be in Parliament. The debate is on tomorrow. Let's take a look at some of your feedback. And Dixon Morande tweets, with bags allowed, allowed in homes, privacy is infringed. It's either security or privacy.
Edwin Sifuna says, these proposals are simply outrageous. Civil liberties cannot be sacrificed at the altar of incompetence and laziness.
Jacqueline Olumbe agrees, says, as long as it doesn't cause any damages, why not? Peace is paramount, but we must close all loopholes.
Of course, the poll results on your screen. Ron Grant says, if they cannot offer security in the public domain, can they do it in private?
Sila Congrati says, no intelligence requires that accurate information be gathered. They have to be sure of the targets, not just trials.
Those are your opinions on our big question tonight. We thank you for participating, for being part of KTN Prime, and of course for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night. I'm Linda Ogutu.
Always a pleasure to have you. My name is Ben Kitili. Good night.